The Cursed Herbs Call, The Spirit Beneath the Dark Well. Part 1. The House at the End of Willow Lane. At the very end of Willow Lane, in the small town of Blackwood, stood an old house that no one dared to mention after dark. The alley leading to it was so narrow that two motorcycles could barely pass each other without brushing their handlebars. During the day, it was lively with children's laughter, street vendors calling out their wares, and televisions humming from the closely packed houses. But every night after 9 o'clock, an unnatural silence would descend upon the lane. People said that a cold wind always blew from the end of the alley, no matter whether it was a sweltering summer or a freezing winter. And at the very end of that lane stood the house of Edward Carter. The house was nearly 7 meters wide and stretched deep into the property. It had been built decades ago in the old countryside style. Its front door was made of dark oak, and both exterior walls were covered with green moss, while inside stood massive wooden pillars polished smooth by time. Yet, the thing people remembered most was not the architecture of the house itself, but the darkness in the middle of it. There had once been an open skylight there. Sunlight used to pour through that opening, brightening and warming the entire house. But for the past 2 years, the skylight had been completely sealed. Sheets of heavy metal covered the top, and beneath them lay a thick steel hatch that took several men to lift. No one knew why Edward had done it. Whenever someone asked, he would simply shake his head and say, "That's all in the past," saying nothing more. It was a night at the beginning of July. Rain drummed heavily against the metal roof. Edward sat alone in his living room, holding a cup of hot tea while staring blankly at the old television. Click. The power went out. The entire house was swallowed by darkness. Edward sighed. Every rainy season was the same. Power outages happened all the time. He stood up, grabbed the flashlight from the table, and headed toward the circuit breaker. Clang. A metallic sound echoed through the house. He froze, completely paralyzed. He pointed his flashlight down the long hallway. Nothing. Only darkness. He was about to turn away when... Clang. The sound came again. This time he heard it clearly. It came from the old skylight. A cold gust of wind swept through the hallway, making his skin crawl. 2 years. Nothing had happened for 2 long years. It's probably a cat. Or a rat. He tried to reassure himself and took a few more steps forward. The back corridor was pitch black, and the flashlight illuminated only a short distance. Tap. A soft knocking sound. Edward stopped breathing. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like someone tapping a finger against metal. Tap. Tap. The knocking came again, louder this time, from beneath the steel hatch. Sweat began to form on his forehead. He stood motionless, his throat suddenly dry. Tap. 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 The knocks were slow and patient, as if someone was trapped down there, trying to come back up. Edward stepped backward, 1 step, then another, before turning and hurrying away. He didn't want to remember, not after 2 years, not after that terrible night. But the knocking continued. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound struck his memories like a hammer. Edward sank into a chair, his hands trembling violently. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The rain, the wind, and the knocking from the back of the house blended into something horrifying. Then suddenly, the knocking stopped. Silence filled the house. Edward slowly raised his head. At that exact moment, a child's voice whispered softly into the wind, "Mom?" He went completely pale. The teacup slipped from his hand. Crash. Porcelain shattered across the floor, but he didn't even notice. He was still listening. Outside, there was nothing, only the rain. A long time later, he finally stood up. He walked to the family altar and lit 3 incense sticks. The smoke curled into the air. He looked at the photograph of his late wife and spoke with a trembling voice. "Emily, have they come back?" No one answered, only the sound of rain on the roof. That night, Edward did not sleep. He sat before the altar until dawn. Only when the first rays of sunlight entered the house did he begin to breathe normally again. But deep inside, he knew those knocks were no accident. Something had awakened, something that had been buried for 2 long years. The next morning, Edward walked to the small coffee shop at the entrance of the lane. Several men from the neighborhood were already there. One of them smiled. "You're up early today, Edward." He simply nodded, his face pale and exhausted. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Did any of you hear something strange last night?" Everyone looked at one another. "What kind of strange?" Edward hesitated. "Knocking from the back of my house." The table fell silent. An older man slowly put down his coffee cup and stared toward the end of Willow Lane, his eyes becoming distant. "The knocking has started again?" Edward looked up. "You know about it?" The old man sighed deeply. "It's been 2 years. I thought it was over. Someone died beneath that skylight." The air suddenly felt colder. "Not one person," the old man continued, "but 2. Edward clenched his fists. The memories he had tried to bury came rushing back. A moonless night, people screaming, footsteps running across the metal roof, and then the terrible sound of something falling. Everything had begun in the year 2010.